Start, sir.
Yeah.
So here is a 13-year-old male who presents with history of.
There are two short cases. Two cases. Case 1 in the first session and case 2 in the second session. Both will be presented by our neurology, DNB medicine student from Sagar Hospital, Dr. Meghana. So the first case will be in the first half and the second case will be in the second half of session. Yeah, please go ahead.
So this is a 13-year-old male who presents with history of fall, which he sustained due to a prank pulled by a friend 8 months back. After which he noticed that he had pain in the lower back, which is radiating to both the thighs. Pain persists throughout the day, aggravates on walking and on moving the legs. However, patient was able to walk with minimal support. He had consulted a homeopathic practitioner for the pain and had had medications for the same with only with minimal pain relief.
Right. Now let us stop. Now, at this point, the patient has come to you. What
Yes,
are
sir.
your thoughts? How will you proceed?
The pain must have. I would attribute the pain to the fall at this point.
He had a pain in the low back radiating to the thighs. Now, is it
Yes,
a
sir.
referred pain from the joints or you think it is a radicular pain at that point of time?
At this point of time, I think a referred pain from the joint.
Okay, so it is basically a muscle and bone problem because
Yes,
of
sir.
the fall probably at that time. So if the examination was normal, from the history,
Yes,
what
sir.
you are saying is it looks like a musculoskeletal problem. And so naturally, the symptomatic treatment with painkillers is quite in order at that point of time.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
this was 8 months back, right?
8 months back. Yes.
8 years. It started off 8 months back. Right. Next slide.
Because there was no pain relief, he had consulted a rheumatologist for the pain and was evaluated and found to have HLA-B27 positive. So he was investigated thoroughly and ruled out ankylosing spondylitis and was referred to neurologist later.
Okay, so naturally, because it was a musculoskeletal problem, and somebody referred him to a rheumatologist, and rheumatologist pursued with the provisional diagnosis at that point of time as a musculoskeletal problem. And because it was a low back pain in a young person, one of the differential diagnoses of persistent pain, because at that point of time, the rheumatologist thought that it is not a trauma and pain. If it is a trauma and pain, it should have gradually reduced over a period of time. If it is a blunt injury. But because the pain is persisting, so the investigations were done for a trauma being incidental and looking for ankylosing spondylitis because the pain was more on movement. Okay, 1 month later.
1 month later, after the initial symptom, patient had difficulty in climbing up the stairs, which was due to difficulty in lifting up both the legs. He required help of the railing to climb up the stairs, and but at that point of time, he is able to climb down the stairs easily.
Okay, so what is this due to? Difficulty in climbing up the stairs due to difficulty in lifting up both legs. Now, is this problem due to pain or due to motor weakness? Now, that is a very important point for discussion.
Sir, he did have pain at that time, but that has subsided. It is compared to the previous pain. He said the pain is reduced at that point. So, I think this.
So, from your history, you think it is a motor weakness rather than the pain, which is the cause for difficulty in going up the staircase, but coming down not climbing down the stairs. Should be correct. Coming down the staircase.
Yes,
so, what is the muscle required for going up the staircase?
Gluteus.
Glutei. Coming down?
So, quadriceps.
Quadriceps. Going up G gluteus. coming down phonetically, coming down quadriceps. It's easy to remember. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So at this point of time, if the pain is not the limiting factor, this problem is a motor weakness, proximal muscles. Remember, proximal muscles includes quadriceps. So at this point, the glutei are weaker, and so he has difficulty to go up. While coming down, when you put one step down, before you remove the other leg, the knee should be locked. Otherwise, you will stumble and fall. So that means quadriceps is very important to stabilize one leg. When you have to remove the other leg and the whole body weight is on one leg, so the quadriceps should lock the knee joint. Right. Then
Yes, sir. 3 months after the initial symptom, he noticed that he had difficulty in standing up from sitting position, and however, he was able to turn in at that time he was able to turn around in bed easily.
now what is this required? Standing up from sitting posture is the same proximal muscles. So initially the weakness is only for going up the staircase, but then later on the weakness progressed that he is not able to get up from chair. Further weakness, next weakness is to get up from the Indian toilet seat is difficult, but from a chair is okay. More weakness even from the chair is difficult. So here you have said that difficulty in standing up from sitting, but you have not said sitting where? Ground level to up or chair to up?
A chair to up, sir.
So that means there is a significant proximal muscle
Weakness.
weakness. Right.
So, 4 months after the initial symptom, patient developed difficulty in standing and started requiring support for the same. So, because of that, he is not able to urinate standing.
Okay, so the standing difficulty may be both due to quadriceps weakness because the knee is not locked, or even proximal muscle weakness. So at this point of time, his primary symptom is proximal muscle weakness. Okay, right. So the
Yes, sir.
so-called fall from the scooter is totally unrelated. Initially investigated for musculoskeletal system, and subsequently when he developed proximal muscle weakness, that is the stage when I saw him. So they said that he is not able to get up from a low stool or from a chair. So that was the time when I said there is a proximal muscle weakness. So the neurogenic versus myogenic. So I asked him for a myogenic for a CPK and a neurogenic for a ENMG. That was the time when I saw him. And after that, that was in January. After that, he disappeared only to reappear about 3 days ago. Okay, what happened in the intervening period?
And 6 months after the initial symptom, he was unable to put weight on his right leg, and he's able to stand with support on his using his left leg. And he guides his right foot into the slippers with the help of his hands, but he's able to put without any help. He's able to put on slippers without any help for the left foot.
So the first para, 6 months after unable to put weight on his right leg and stand with support on his left leg. Now what does that mean? So you remember when you are putting on your pant, you can stand on one leg and put the pant in the other leg and you do the other way around. So that you can do very easily as long as one leg is able to bear the weight of the body. If the leg is not able to bear the weight of the body, then you need to take a support to wear a pant or underwear or whatever it is. So according to this symptom, what do you think is the first paragraph talking us about? Unable to put weight on his right leg and stand with support on his left leg. That means what?
He's unable to lock his right leg. So he
that
has
means
developed
his
more.
right leg is much weaker, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
His right leg is much weaker than the left. So the asymmetry has started. Asymmetry has started. And an additional point, you said he guides his right foot into the slippers with the help of his hands. Why?
Yes.
What does this mean?
Means he has developed weakness of the foot as well. So
weakness of the right foot muscles. Because normally we are able to wear the slipper because our toes will guide it further and we are able to easily do it. So when there is a small muscles of the foot are weak, you are not able to do that. So instead of the foot going in, with the left hand, you push the slipper inside. So this first paragraph shows that the patient has developed a asymmetric weakness, not only proximal muscle up till now the distal muscle are also affected, right?
Yes, sir.
So what are the conditions where you get the initial symptom is proximal muscle weakness? Under what circumstances you get initial symptom proximal muscle
Myopathy.
weakness? Neurogenic or
Muscular
myogenic?
muscle.
If it is a muscle
Yes, sir.
disease, proximal muscles, depending upon the speed
The
of the
time.
illness, it may be polymyositis, muscular dystrophy, and all. If it is a neurogenic, then it becomes a radiculopathy. So the fact that the patient developed proximal muscle weakness initially means either it is a radiculopathy where motor roots are involved or it is a myopathy.
Yes.
I mean, time and again, I'm telling you difference between neurogenic, myogenic, clinical, biochemical, electrophysiological, and histopathological. So here, proximal muscle, then going into the distal. So at this point, you have to consider whether it is developing some myogenic disease or is it a neurogenic disease. So that is the reason when for myogenic we do CPK and for neurogenic we do a ANMG. So we are on the track of either myopathy or radiculopathy. Then next,
7 months after initial symptom, pain over the lower back and both the thighs increased in intensity, and it is present throughout the day to an extent that he is unable to sleep because of the pain, and requiring wheelchair mobilization, which is due to the pain. So,
what is this pain? Remember, we are now thinking about proximal muscle disease going into the distal. Either it is a neurogenic or myogenic. If it is a
yes,
myogenic, because it is a 3 to 4 months, whether it is a polymyositis or some type of muscular dystrophy or some systemic causes of myopathy. If it is a neurogenic, it is a radiculopathy. Occasionally, it may be anterior onset disease. Now, the pain, which is very severe, disturbing his sleep and disturbing his daily activity, where is the pain?
in the lower back and radiating to the thighs, sir. Both the thighs.
The low back and in the thighs. So pain is a very unusual symptom of a muscle disease, except in inflammatory muscle disease. Which is the inflammatory muscle disease?
Polymyositis.
Polymyositis. So there the pain will be in the thigh muscles. It won't be in the distal part because the distal on the foot there are hardly any muscles. So if the pain is throughout the limb, it is more in favor of neurogenic, and a severe disturbing pain is extremely unusual in myogenic. So we are now shifting proximal muscle weakness, myogenic or neurogenic, to more likely to be neurogenic in view of the severe pain, which means the pain is due to radiculopathy, right?
Yes, sir.
Which radiculopathy, motor or sensory? Difficult question. Pain is conveyed by motor route or sensory route?
Sensory.
Then what is the difficulty? So if the patient has got pain as a symptom, it is a radiculopathy, no doubt. But what sensory fibers are to be affected because it's an irritation of the sensory fiber. Okay, then requiring wheelchair for mobilization, is it due to pain or is it due to motor weakness?
It is due to pain.
Okay.
It is due to pain, sir.
So pain is an overriding symptom in this patient in addition to motor weakness, which was proximal initially and then distal. So it looks like we are on to the neurogenic problem affecting the motor roots as well as the sensory roots. Next.
So at this point, patient is able to get up from the bed, and he's able to turn about in the bed. He's able to eat by himself, comb his hair. He's able to stand up with support, walk with support, and he's able to grip his footwear.
You remember, but before he came to me, or maybe soon after, an MR pelvis was done because of the severe
Uh,
pain in the low back
yes, sir.
to look for ankylosing spondylitis and other things.
Spondylitis.
And the MR pelvis was reported as normal at the time. Okay, next.
One second. No history of bowel or bladder involvement, no history of loss of uh, pain or temperature sensation, slippage of footwear, limb stiffness, or no history of any loss of sensation, and no history of upper limb weakness. There was no history of fever also.
So, which means that the patient's main symptoms are two. One is the extreme degree of motor weakness, starting proximally and going distally. Second is the extreme degree of pain. These are the two important things. Without bladder and sensory, all paraplegias have three components: motor, sensory, and bladder. So here both lower limbs are affected asymmetrically. Important, proximal more than distal. Pain is a very prominent feature. So at the end of the story, what do you think the patient has?
So he has a
Yeah, we're not
progressive
finished the-
proximal
Pardon?
examination.
So it looks that the patient has a predominant motor radiculopathy for weakness and for pain, probably sensory radiculopathy or a musculoskeletal problem still, which is not detectable at that time when MR pelvis was done. Okay, next.
Past history, no significant history in the past. Uh, Personal history, nothing abnormal apart from sleep, which is
Okay.
reduced because of the pain. No significant family history. Neurological examination, patient is conscious and alert. Higher mental functions were normal. Cranial nerves are normal. Motor system examination, bulk is normal bilaterally. Tone, mild hypotonia noted in both lower limbs. Upper limbs were normal. And power examination, hip flexors and extensors of hip were weak, both bilaterally. And
So what is the
and also
conclusion of your motor system exam? The right side is much more weaker compared to the
then
left,
the
but
yes, sir.
proximal as well as distal part, they are almost equally affected. 2 by
Yes, sir.
5 plantar flexion, dorsal flexion, hip flexion also 2 by 5. So at the time when you have seen the patient, the motor weakness is uniform in the right lower limb, both proximal and distal. But remember the story. The story, it started proximally and then went to the distal. That's why story is important. And there is an asymmetry because the left side is much better distally particularly compared to the proximal. Okay,
Yes.
next. Now this is the gate which you are seeing. With great difficulty, he is able to stand with support.
Yes, sir.
Why is it shaking?
Sir.
Okay. I think it's, let me see whether I can show it in my, because it is coming in fractionated seconds. Okay, next.
That's it. That's what
Yes.
reflex. Uh, Reflexes by knee jerk is absent bilateral. Ankle reflexes are absent. Upper limb reflexes were normal. Sensory system examination, fine touch and pain sensation was found to be intact.
Use the word
Okay.
cotton touch. Don't use the word fine touch.
Okay.
And use the word pain sensation for pin or pin sensation. Because when you say
Okay.
pain, you don't know whether you have pinched the patient or whether you used something else. You have no idea. So please be descriptive.
Okay,
Okay.
sir. Yeah, that's so. Diagnosis.
High steppage gait
Neuro.
means what? You said high steppage gait. What does that mean?
Sir, he had foot drop.
Foot drop. So the
Yeah.
distal motor weakness is quite significant that he has got a foot drop right more than left, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And
next.
diagnosis: neurological deficit, progressive proximal muscle weakness involving bilateral lower limb, right more than left. Right foot drop was noted with no sensory deficits and sparing bowel and bladder. And anatomical localization, it is lower lumbar and sacral motor roots were involved. And etiological, uh, it is could be compressive.
So where is that lower lumbar and sacral means? Can you anatomically focus it where?
Sir, he has hip difficulty in hip
No,
flexion
no,
and
anatomically, it means the patient is having a lesion in cauda equina, isn't it?
yes,
Because you
yes,
see
sir.
the purely lower motor neuron, hypotonia, areflexia, no
Yes, sir.
sensory involvement, no bladder involvement. So
No
if
bladder
it is a
involvement.
motor radiculopathy, why not it be
Yes.
motor radiculopathy like CIDP? Why are you saying compressive?
Sir, it is asymmetrical and upper limbs are spared. It is only involving
You
the
can
lower
start in the
limbs.
lower limb, it can be in the lower limb. If you wait for some time, it may go up also. What is against CIDP?
Um,
Yeah, somebody has
asym-
pointed out that in the neurological deficit, you have not mentioned that the patient has no sensory objectively, but there is a sensory symptom which you have to take into account. In CIDP, the pain is not a feature. CIDP is a motor radiculopathy. So CIDP pain is not a feature. So this is unlikely to be a CIDP because if you look at the patient, the pain is something very disturbing, though it has come quite late in the illness. This is the MR pelvis, which was normal. Now you see the MR thoracolumbar. So please don't put any lines on this. Thoracolumbar spine, you see a large tumor here extending from D11 down. This is a T2 sequence. And you see a cross section here, a big tumor sitting in the lumbosacral region. And you see the T1. You see T1, it is a hypointense. You see this? So we put a contrast here. After the contrast, you can see intensely enhancing. Look at this. This is a normal spinal cord here. And then at D11, the tumor starts and is extending right up to L5. This is the longest tumor. Now that is called as the ependymoma. I hope I am able to, I hope you are hearing me, right? Huh? So this patient basically had a motor weakness of a LMN type. And if it is LMN, is it anterior horn, motor root or plexus? It is motor root. Whether it is CADA or conus or CIDP, we removed the CIDP because of the pain. And this is the difference between conus and cauda, which we have been telling time and again. This is a cauda equina syndrome. It's very severe, asymmetric, radicular pain. Motor findings may be severe, again asymmetrical as in this patient. Sensory is not yet seen in this patient. If it is there, it will be asymmetric saddle distribution. Tendon reflexes are absent. Sphincter is late and less severe, and it is gradual and unilateral. So in other words, we are dealing with cauda equina syndrome. But in this cauda equina, what is the compression is due to ependymoma. The common tumors are ependymoma, schwannoma. Ependymoma is a ependymal cell, which is a neuroglial cell which forms the lining of the ventricle and lining of the central canal of the spinal cord. So the tumor is arising from the lining of the central canal of the spinal cord. Intracranial ependymomas present as intraventricular mass. Spinal ependymoma, as in this patient, is an intramedullary mass arising from central canal and going down to the cauda equina. Now, this is an example of a intraventricular mass, that is intraventricular ependymoma. In children, 90% are intracranial. In adolescents, like in this boy, 75% are in the spinal canal. Now, how do you manage? Obviously, surgery, and followed by the usual treatment for, depending upon the stage of the tumor, radiation therapy, radiosurgery, or chemotherapy. This is for the next slide, sorry. So please let me know whether you have been able to hear this. So I hope you have followed the thought process. Patient has a predominant motor weakness and pain. So it is a lower motor neuron. So it is a cauda equina. It is not CIDP. And because of the, if you go back and check the clinical book which I have written, or paraplegia which you have heard, that these are the motor roots which are being affected and the sensory roots only symptomatic. And because of the long-standing pain as a problem, we look for a local lesions like schwannomas, metastatic tumors, even abscess, for example. Ependymoma is the commonest. What is ependymoma? A tumor arising from the inner lining of the ventricle and spinal canal, central canal. Now this is a tumor here. And okay, so I showed you the asymmetry in the previous patient. Right is grossly asymmetrically affected, and this is the quadriceps. Only with support he is able to extend the knee better, but there is a definite quadriceps weakness. So all these things were already shown. I think now I will go off the screen.
Start.
Yeah, start.
A 12-year-old boy who presented to the OPD with history of fall 6 weeks ago when he was riding a bicycle, following which he was unable to get up from the ground. With the help of his father, he was pulled up, and subsequently he was able to walk back to his home by himself. 2 days after the initial episode, patient had difficulty in getting up from the lying down position. He had to grab the sides of the bed and turn to one side and pull himself up, after which he had no difficulty in walking.
But you said, one minute, go back. You are saying a difficulty to get out of the bed. He has to grab the side roll of the bed. What about toilet, getting up from the squatting position? Because nowhere you have mentioned about this.
Sir, he getting up from the from the bathroom, he had difficulty, sir. He had to be
not mentioned because you are only saying that turning in the bed and getting out of the bed is a truncal weakness.
Yes, sir.
But you should have, you mean that the patient also had difficulty to get up from squatting position.
Huh? Yes, sir.
So what does that mean? The patient has proximal muscles of the lower limb and truncal muscle weakness of a fairly acute onset.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then.
He had difficulty in wearing t-shirt and requiring help because he was unable to lift his arms, and similarly he was unable to comb his hair as well.
What does this mean? What does this mean?
Like shoulder abduction is difficult, sir.
No, no, it
Proximal
means that
muscle weakness
patient
of the
has proximal muscle weakness in the upper limb.
upper limb.
So you see
Yes,
the
sir.
difference. The previous case also had a proximal muscle weakness in the lower limb, which over a period of several months gradually worsened. Whereas here, within a matter of 2 days, we had a weakness of the proximal muscles in the lower limbs, truncal muscles, and then also the upper limbs within a matter of 48 hours. Both are proximal muscle case, but one is very slow progressive with a pain as a predominant feature. Now here within 48 hours is almost disabled both in upper and lower limbs. The rapidity of the progress is very important. So at this point, proximal muscle weakness, myogenic or a neurogenic. Myogenic, such a rapid progression is polymyositis. Obviously, it is not a muscular dystrophy. If it is a neurogenic, rapidly progressive radiculopathy, the commonest cause is hello.
So GB syndrome.
Yeah, GB syndrome is the commonest radiculopathy. Yeah, correct. GB syndrome. Okay, then
After 4 days of initial symptom, patient had difficulty in getting up from the sitting position, requiring help. He also had difficulty in climbing up and down the stairs, requiring one-person help. Patient had sustained multiple minor falls while he was walking due to weakness of his limb. He could not get up. Following the fall, he could not get up by himself without support.
so that means he had a severe degree of proximal muscle weakness, so much so that he had a frequent falls. He was unable to maintain the balance. Now here, the frequent falls is not because of ataxia, but because of motor weakness. Because sometimes the patients are brought saying that he's falling frequently, he doesn't have balance. But when you take proper history, whether he is able to get up from squatting, able to get up from chair, is able to comb, able to wash his head, then you will know that it is a proximal muscle weakness and it is not ataxia. You understand? So you need
Yes.
to analyze each symptom. So here the patient had severe degree of proximal muscle weakness, so much so he had a frequent falls while walking. Then last paragraph, what does that mean?
Distal, like no history of slippage of footwear or difficulty in guiding into the slippers. He has no
history of
difficulty
slippage
in
of footwear. Okay.
no history of difficulty in writing, buttoning and unbuttoning. No difficulty in mixing food, and he is able to eat by himself. There was no history of any pain or history of fatigability or drooping of eyelids noted.
So what does this paragraph mean?
That is, there is distal muscle involved is not less. It is not there.
Distal muscles are quite normal. So the entry to the diagnosis is a proximal muscle weakness, rapidly progressive within a matter of 4 days. He is quite disabled, having frequent falls, both affecting the lower limb and upper limbs. At this point of time, there is no cranial nerve dysfunction, isn't it?
No, sir.
Now, at this point of time, what do you think it is? Are we on myogenic or are we on neurogenic track?
Neurogenic because it is rapidly progressing.
Neurogenic track. Why? Why not myogenic? There is nothing to suggest. There is no friend of neurogenic, isn't it? Tingling, numbness,
Yes.
paresthesia. There is no friend. And
Yes.
there is no friend of polymyositis like muscular pain. But you are right in neurogenic saying that between the two, you have to choose GB syndrome versus polymyositis. GB syndrome is much more rapidly progressive compared to polymyositis. And secondly, GB syndrome is much more commoner in practice than a occasional polymyositis. So as I always say that common things first, let us diagnose the common conditions. So it looks like we are on to the GB syndrome, though there is no clinical evidence of a friend. In view of the commonality, we think of a GB syndrome. Okay. So in the examination, we should find evidence of lower motor neuron paralysis, which confirms that it is a GB syndrome. Right.
Past
Next.
history. Past history at age of 3, while the patient was running, he sustained a fall, following which he was unable to get up, and was not. And after that, he was noticed to have difficulty in walking. During that time, also, he was noticed to have sustained. He was found he had sustained multiple falls when he attempted to walk. He was given some Ayurvedic treatment, and symptoms have improved over 15 days at that time. Patient remained asymptomatic since that. Is this
But
presentation?
what do you think the interpretation of this story?
Um,
What do you think he had at that time? He had a proximal muscle weakness also,
Proximal muscle weakness.
isn't it?
Yes.
He was
Yes.
unable to get up and noticed to have difficulty in walking, and multiple falls also he had. Exactly the same story when he was 3 years. Now how old is he?
12,
Huh?
12 years. 12 years old.
11 years. In the intervening
Right.
8 years, he had no such symptoms.
No, sir.
So the same story at the age of 3 years, and Ayurvedic or non-Ayurvedic, patient recovered completely. Do you
Yes.
think it is a recurrence of that, or what do you think might have happened at that time? The story is same.
Could have been this could have been a recurrent GB syndrome, sir. The current presentation.
Could have been a recurrent GB syndrome, or there may be some genetically inherited, some physiological
Yes.
dysfunction of the muscle or nerve ending, which may be the reason. We don't know. Quite unusual, but it needs to be studied properly and found out what it is due to. If we don't find
Family
anything
history.
genetically inherited things, one can say an occasional relapse of GB syndrome. Or do you think it is a possibility of a hypokalemic periodic paralysis, hypokalemic paralysis?
Yes, sir. It is possible because preceding both the incident, patient was doing a strenuous physical activity, so which has sustained a fall.
Yeah. But normally, hypokalemic periodic paralysis, the maximum disability at the onset, and then there is a gradual recovery, usually over a period of 24-36 hours. But it is quite possible that the weakness may take a few more days to disappear. So one of the differential diagnosis could be that this patient may be having a potassium channel problem, giving rise to two distinct episodes with a gap of several years. Okay, next.
Neurological examination. If patient was conscious and alert, higher mental functions were normal, cranial nerves
Oh,
were normal.
you didn't tell me the story. By the time you started seeing the patient, what was the progress of the disease? That is very
So by
important.
the
Whenever you are taking a history, a patient had an acute onset of hemiplegia 1 month ago. Today, when I'm seeing him, he has made a partial recovery. That means it is not
yes,
an ongoing illness of a tumor. It looks to be more a stroke, isn't it? So that
yes, sir.
story is very important. Stable, worsening, or improving.
By the time I saw him, he started improving, sir. He was
That is a
able
very
to get up
important
from
point. Correct.
he's able to get up from squatting position with much less difficulty, and the number of falls he sustained has reduced,
So when
and
did you
he's
see him
able.
after how many days of the illness?
I saw him on the seventh day, sir. Seventh
Seventh
day.
day. Yeah. So rapid deterioration in 48 hours with multiple falls, and by seventh day he stopped falling and he has improved considerably, able to get up from squatting. So that story is very important. Rapid deterioration and fairly rapid recovery, which again looks like whether it is some potassium channel problem or GB syndrome. So that story is very important, progression of the disease. Okay.
Motor system examination, bulk bilaterally normal, tone mild, hypotonia noted in all four limbs. This is power examination. Here, shoulder abduction was weak, sir. Otherwise,
So lower limbs, in both lower and upper limbs, proximal muscle weakness is still present.
yes, sir.
But you see now,
Even
you understand why I keep saying 3 by 5, 5 by 5 has got no meaning in clinical practice, in patient care. In patient care, the patient who could not walk without frequent falls is now able to walk. Is the definite neurological recovery. As against, I saw the patient, it was 4 by 5, and you saw the patient, it was 3 by 5. So technically, he has worsened, but you ask the story, he will say that I have improved. You understand?
yes.
Okay, next.
Video.
No, you didn't tell me about reflexes.
Reflexes were absent. No, normal reflexes.
Normal. Somebody is asking me multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is a corticospinal tract involvement, which means the patient has distal muscle weakness more than the proximal. Here, distinctly, it is a proximal muscle weakness. So the question of multiple sclerosis does not occur. Okay, let us see quickly the videos. This is the first video when I saw him in the initial part of the story. Look at the way he is trying to get up. He requires support to get up. Your video is breaking. Okay, I will show the videos again from my computer. So he required support to get up from the squatting. Now, when you saw him after 7 days, show the next video. See, look at him. He's able to do Ganapati wood bite so clearly. By 7th day, he has improved. Whether HVS treatment or Ayurvedic treatment or Baba treatment, spontaneous recovery. We all make name and money out of it. Okay, so that is the amount of recovery he had. Next. Right. So he's able to lift his upper limbs very quickly. Okay, next. Okay, go to the next slide. So the conclusion is that he has made a rapid recovery and a rapid progression. Rapid progression and a rapid recovery. Yes?
So neurological deficit is acute proximal muscle weakness involving bilateral upper and lower limbs. Anatomical localization here is the motor radical, and possible pathological diagnosis is demyelinating polyradiculopathy, and etiology could be recurrent GBS.
Yeah, we discussed why proximal muscle weakness, neurogenic, why not myogenic. I discussed about this two conditions of an acute muscle weakness in muscle is a polymyositis, and the acute in radiculopathy is the GB syndrome. Between the two, GB is more common, so we are asking for a GB diagnosis. But by the time you examine, the reflexes were normal. So you are seeing a patient at a different stage of illness. So we still go on the, now how do we proceed to confirm that it is a radiculopathy and not myopathy?
NCS. Nerve conduction.
Yeah, so the diagnosis is nerve conduction and a H reflex for radiculopathy. If that is normal, then they should put a needle in the muscle for evidence of polymyositis. So in a place where you are not clinically sure between the two, one you do a CPK, which shows there is a muscle problem. The another one is do a nerve conduction, including H reflex, and then a EMG. So this patient, I think we got the nerve conduction done. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Nerve conduction showed evidence of radiculopathy, proximal segment. Okay. Next slide is there, or shall I take over? Okay, there is some problem with the. You see, you please turn your head to the left and see how he is getting up. Now you saw that the first one where the patient had difficulty in getting up, and we see the way he is walking also, the quadriceps weakness, so he is trying to walk in that fashion. Yeah, so that is what the remarkable. Now, is it a hypokalemic periodic paralysis? So it is an autosomal dominant muscle weakness. Episodic is there, triggered by carbohydrate-rich meals. You should check for potassium, ECG for hypokalemic changes. Now, in view of the history of weakness at the age of 3 years, look for a channelopathy. Now, what is a channelopathy? They are diseases caused by disturbed function of ion channels or the proteins. The diseases are either congenital or even acquired. An autoimmune disease can have a ion channel problem. Now, it could be a voltage gated or it can be a chemical interaction, what is called as a ligand gated or mechanical. Now, for some examples, inherited muscle disease, as I said, channelopathies can be inherited or acquired. So, inherited muscle diseases, myotonia, paramyotonia congenita, sodium channel, Thompson's disease, chloride channel, familial hyperkalemic periodic paralysis, sodium channel, hypokalemic periodic paralysis, calcium channel, and even episodic ataxia type 1, type 2. So these are all channelopathies which can rapidly worsen and rapidly improve. Some of the examples of ligand-gated channelopathies is nocturnal frontal lobe epilepsy. So channelopathies can affect nerves, can affect muscle, can affect the central nervous system also because it is a frontal lobe epilepsy. Even paroxysmal chorioathetosis. Now this is a very important information. Guillain-Barré syndrome, CIDP, multiple sclerosis, all are acquired diseases. They are traditionally regarded as a result of demyelination, but could also be explained by sodium channel dysfunction. The transient nature of the symptoms in MS, rapid recovery that is seen in MS as well as GBS as in this patient, are consistent with a temporary channelopathy mediated by antibodies than a longer process of demyelination and remyelination. We all know that MS also the patient improves rapidly on their own without any interference. GB syndrome, like what we have seen in this patient, improve rapidly and it may be recurrent. So it is possible that MS, GB syndrome, they are all part of the channelopathies, and I suspect that this is a patient who has a channelopathy because of the two episodes.